What's up, everybody? This is Lyle with No Hippie BBQ. What I'm going to be doing today is we are just going to be doing some St. Louis cut ribs. I'm just doing one rack. We're going to throw that on the Weber kettle grill. We're not going to be using any fancy equipment, no Gorilla Q's, no Smokinators. We're just going to be ghetto fabulous. Anyway, one thing I'm going to do with these ribs, I'm going to go ahead and remove the membrane. And I just did a video where I did a comparison between membrane on, membrane off, and that was pretty much the first time that I had ever had ribs. Well, the first time I had made ribs and left the membrane on, and it seems like that's kind of the preferred choice of most people. I really didn't care either way about the membrane as far as taste, but everybody that was eating with me had a bunch of membranes left over on their plate, so I'm just going to stick with what I know on it. But I'm sure whether you take the membrane off or leave it on, you're going to be good to go. Anyway, I have the membrane off, and then what I try to do is I try to cut off some of this, big chunks of fat that you might see on the bottom of the ribs, which is another reason why I actually like taking the membrane off, is so I can get just some of this fat off. And some people leave the fat on there. They say that their ribs are moist with it. I really have never had a problem with the moistness, so it doesn't really matter to me. Anyway, these ribs have this big old hunk of fat between this last set of ribs. Normally, if I was cooking this on like my Weber Smoky Mountain, I would probably trim that fat off. But what I'm going to do, just so it fits better on my kettle, is I'm going to cut these last two ribs off anyway. And we're still going to cook them. I just want the ribs to lay as flat as possible on there. So we got that. There is a little bit more fat over here that I am going to take off, because there's nothing that I hate more than some fatty ribs. Alright. That's close enough. Now, as far as the rub what I'm going to use, for those of you guys that I actually sent some of this rub to, I'm going to be using that particular habanero rub, except I don't have the habanero in there. Normally I would roll with the habanero on it, but I'm making these ribs for some people to help me out at work, and I don't want to light them up and have them complaining about how hot they are. So I'm going to just use that rub. It's basically a Memphis dry rub, or pretty similar to it. Anyway, I'm going to get this fat and everything off of this pan, rinse these ribs off again, dry them off, and then we'll start applying this rub. What I was talking about, like this big old layer of fat that is between there, I'm probably going to just cut this off and then trim all this fat off and throw that on, but you don't need to be around for that. Anyway, as far as our rub goes, I'm not using a binder. These ribs are going to have a chance to sit for about 2.5 hours in the refrigerator before they go on. So we should be fine without that. And I'm not going to be using any traditional barbecue sauce on these ribs. They aren't going to be dry because I am going to foil them with some brown sugar, butter, stuff like that. But I'm not going to be adding a traditional barbecue sauce to it. So I do want there to be a little bit more rub than I would traditionally use on it. Cut the fat off the other side of this little miniature riblet here, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like here. Still a bit of fat on there, but we're going to be okay with that. As far as this rub I came up with, and those of you guys that I sent this stuff to, hopefully you guys like it. But what I was trying to pattern this rub after was Killer Hogs barbecue rub. I really like the color that you get on that, so I think that this is pretty much right on target as far as the coloring goes. Before I start getting these grates cleaned off, I wanted to kind of show you my setup. So I just have some bricks separating the main area of charcoal, and that's apple wood on top of that, from the main cooking chamber. Now I do have a few coals and some apple wood down in there, and really I just wanted to see if there would be a difference in taste from the fat dripping off of the ribs onto the coals. So this is going to be a bit of an experiment, but what I'm going to do is kind of turn these vents down, get this grill cleaned off, and we're going to be cooking at about 275 degrees, I'd imagine. I'm just going to go by feel on this. We just got these ribs on. I am going to check them a little bit more frequently just because I do have that charcoal directly below it. I will be spritzing it down with the mixture of apple juice and apple cider vinegar as we're going along. Anyway, as far as the vent setup goes, I have the bottom vent set at about halfway open, and then the top I'm going to put over the meat, and I have that cracked about a little bit less than a quarter of the way open. We're about 2 hours in on this right now, and I'm going to go ahead and start spritzing these down. And again, if you ever see me spritzing in any of the recipes I do, it's not necessarily because I think it needs the moisture, it's just adding another layer of flavor. And this mixture, if I didn't mention it earlier, 3/4 apple juice, 1/4 apple cider vinegar. We're about 3 hours in on these ribs, and we can see that the bones are starting to get a little bit of pullback. There's a little bit of bend, not a whole lot. The color looks absolutely outstanding on it. I'm going to go ahead and just hit it real quick with a little bit of this apple juice vinegar mixture, and I'm going to keep letting it go. I'm going to go a little bit more by feel on this than I am on time. These ribs look just about where I want them to be. The color is absolutely perfect. The bend is right where I want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and pull these off, take them inside, and we're going to wrap them. Then I'm going to add a few more charcoals over here and get it back out here. Let's go ahead and put the finishing touches on these ribs. Now, if you've watched any of my other rib videos before, the ones that I've actually wrapped and done with sauce and everything, you'd notice that I'm putting a little less brown sugar down, and part of that is we're not going to be adding any barbecue sauce to this. What I am going to do is I am going to still go ahead and add my butter, and we're just going with the squeeze butter. And the reason I'm doing this is because I still want there to be some liquid left over when we're done cooking to glaze these ribs down with. So we have our butter, our brown sugar. I'm going to hit it with just a little bit more of this rub that we had. And then we are going to hit this. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, let's spray it down with some of this apple juice, apple cider vinegar. Now we're going to hit it down like this. Typically, I would be putting some more brown sugar and stuff down here. Really, on this one, all I'm going to do is come back over the back with some of our apple cider vinegar, apple juice spray. Now we're just going to go ahead and wrap it. Now when we throw this back out on the Weber, we are still going to go meat side down on that, or we're going to go meat side down on it. These ribs off of the smoker, or off the Weber, should I say, and here's kind of what they're looking like. And I'm going to bring you guys in, but the color on this is outstanding, if I do say so myself. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just this little bit of liquid that has been left in this foil pack. We're going to drain that out, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you guys in so you can kind of see what these ribs look like. Back on the smoker, we're just going to leave it right like that. Then I'm just going to come back over it with some of this rub and let that soak in. And that's it. Product right here, got a nice little mahogany color on that. I'm gonna go ahead and take a bite of these. Great flavor on those. Let's try it again. I really do wish that I could cut into these other ribs that were cooked exactly the way I wanted them to. But like I said, these are made for somebody else, so I can't get into those. But I think these are outstanding. Anyway, thanks for stopping by BBQ Barbecue. Appreciate it. Comment, subscribe, and I'm out.